people want to learn commercial real estate online, just telling your stories or sharing simple tips, your journey in a way that you can package it and then give something valuable to the viewers, people love it. Understanding the longevity and the power of real estate, the way that you can maximize real estate is by just being patient. If you can find that opportunity and you can strike, there's a lot of upside there.
This is your Real Estate Syndication Show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Aviva Sonenreich. And Aviva is a managing broker at Warehouse Hotline, which she owns with her father. And it's a family business, as you are going to hear some about. She's in the Denver area. She has grown a major following on social media. She's going to dive into how she has done that, how it has been extremely profitable for her, and even dive into her team, which may surprise you, right? How much she has been able to achieve with the number of team members, I'll say, that she has. And so I know you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to be encouraged by how you can do this as well. You can grow your commercial real estate business, and there's such an opportunity out there that she is going to dive into today that I know you are going to learn a lot from. Aviva, welcome to the show. Honored to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Whitney.
Yeah, I love the background. You and I briefly talked about it beforehand, but man, it sounds like there's some generational history in commercial real estate. Know a little bit about that because me as a parent, like I shared with you, I love thinking through, and I want to teach my kids to think like entrepreneurs and think bigger and potentially pursue real estate, right? Can't control that all the way, but I love hearing people's stories about that. Maybe there's a defining moment for you when it's like, oh, my grandfather said this thing, or my father said this thing, and it's finally hit me that, wow, commercial real estate was like this amazing thing. But either way, I'd love to hear a little bit of that story.
Sure. So, I know everybody wants a bottom-up story, and it's not my reality, but I have still a history in commercial real estate that I'm really proud of. My grandparents fled Nazi Germany. In 1948, they had the option to either go to Israel or come to America. And my grandfather opted into staying into a displaced persons camp with my grandmother for an additional year because he wanted to get to America. So they had freedom, but they gave it up, waited a year in a displaced persons camp in Germany, came to America in 1950. My grandfather was illiterate. He worked on a kill floor for about 20 years until he bought his first piece of property, which was the family duplex. The family duplex turned into a triplex, turned into a quad. They eventually started buying hotels and motels. And in 1984, my grandfather bought the first warehouse. And this was a pivotal moment for generations in our family because we exited the hospitality industry and entered industrial real estate. Now, the thing about industrial real estate in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s was that it was really the butt end of real estate. It had the cheapest rents, cheapest price per square foot. It was not glamorous, but my grandfather had a vision with these warehouses that my father saw. In 1999, my father bought his first warehouse with a syndication that we still own, lease, and manage to this day. And in the preceding 15 years, bought a collection of warehouses, syndicated about a dozen warehouses. Now, as he was syndicating warehouses, something really fascinating happened in Denver, Colorado, or Colorado in general, which was the legalization of cannabis recreationally, which completely changed warehousing in our state. It is still changing warehousing in our state 14 years later. But another pivotal change happened, and that was e-commerce. So over the course of the last 10 or so years, e-commerce has made warehousing, it went from the butt end of real estate to the belle of the ball. which has changed a lot of our strategies. But to answer your question about that moment that I realized commercial real estate was for me, growing up, dad was syndicating deals, mom was a dentist. And I noticed that my mother had to be at work at 8 a.m. and she was drilling and filling every day from 8 to 5. She was working with her back. And my dad could pick me up from school. My dad could take me on field trips. My dad was around because real estate afforded him that luxury. Seeing the two differences in how my parents had to work, one with her brain and her back, and then one with his brain, I realized commercial real estate was something that made sense for me.
I love the story of your grandparents. Man, that's just incredible. Love that. I love that story of getting to America, right, or to the States, and then what you said worked. It sounded like 20 years, and then bought the duplex.
Oh yeah, they just a true immigrant story.
Yeah, and then eventually bought the warehouse.
Yes, we still have that warehouse. There's nothing you can't describe working a property. Your father's worked, your grandfather's worked, and the pride and that comes from that.
As your family has like progressed in this business, what's maybe something that you want to continue for generations?
I mean, understanding the longevity and the power of real estate in that the way that you can maximize real estate is by just being patient, buying right, being ethical, and then being patient, being good to your tenants, being good to your partners, and understand, a lot of people think landlords are evil and, real estate agents are crooks. The reality is I've had instances where another maybe immigrant family or not immigrant family has looked at me and said, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to lease this space. You've changed my life and my family's life." And trusting people with your property and giving them that opportunity to succeed is something that I want. I have an 8-week-old downstairs. You talk about you want your kids to work in real estate. I want mine to work in real estate, but I'm working on, just sleeping through the night with her right now. So
So she wakes up in the middle of the night. You're going over some real estate terminology, right?
I did have a friend buy me a children's finance book, which was pretty cute. I like
That's
that
funny.
one.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Aviva, I know that I want to get right to your superpower and right to your the thing that you shine in, and I know that you've amassed a large social media following and presence, and especially in commercial real estate, right? And I want you to just speak to that journey a little bit, and then I want us to be able to dive in on some of the technology and uses and things like that, and how you've grown in that space. Because I get questions about this all the time. I feel like it's one of those things that everybody knows they need to do. They see other people using it well, but it's difficult, right? It's like this massive thing to overcome, and it seems big anyway. So I want us to, get down to some methods and some techniques, but at first, speak to your journey a little bit, and how that's helped you all so much.
The pandemic hit, and I had this really precious one-eyed cat. And there were rumblings of TikTok being a thing, so I started posting TikToks of my precious one-eyed cat. And one of my best friend calls me a few months in, and he said, "Stop posting your cat. Everybody's posting their cats. Talk about commercial real estate. Talk about what you do. Nobody's talking about what you do. It's all a matter of supply and demand, and that hasn't changed." To this day, there is a large supply of cat content on the internet and a low supply of commercial real estate content, even 4 years later. Because there's a low supply of this type of content, there's a higher demand. Whereas with the cats, since there's a high supply, right? This is basic economics that we learned in high school. High supply of cat content, low demand. Understanding that there was a demand, right? The commercial real estate industry has been largely gate kept until now. People are hungry to learn about it and to consume our content. To be honest with you, a big thing that I learned was, boil it down and keep it a little more simple. But there are still areas where we can go deep. I'm sure you've realized this with your content. People want to learn commercial real estate online, and just telling your stories or sharing simple tips or your journey in a way that you can package it and then give something valuable to the viewers, people love it. And there's a world that wants to consume it. And we are still just getting started in this new reality of commercial real estate online.
How do you get past the, oh, what people are going to think, right? And getting past the, what do I even post? I hear that all the time. What do I even post? I don't even know what to come up with. And how am I going to know that it's something people are going to like? And what if this? And right, I just hear that often. So why don't you speak to that and how you got past that?
In terms of caring what people think about you, this is what I say. It's cringe until you're crushing it, right? Everybody, when I was on TikTok at the beginning, everybody thought it was cringe. And I was like, I'm not really concerned about other people's opinions. But then suddenly, bink, the followers start getting larger and larger and larger. And now this cringe thing you were doing is cool. It's cringe until you're crushing it. So what I would say is just understanding that other people's opinions are nothing, right? They're nothing but thin air. And I wouldn't want to live a life of regret not doing what I wanted to do in fear of something as nominal as other people's opinions. Now, in terms of what to post, man, I have just found that being in the trenches and just posting, your little thoughts or anecdotes or stories actually perform the best. A good example is I'll be in a warehouse and little things about warehouses that are not glamorous and you wouldn't think anybody cared about, but people need to know. Like, I can look at a garage door, count the panels, and know how tall the garage door is, right? Each panel's 2 feet. Simple posts like that, where it's like my eye is looking for certain things in a property, sharing those in a quick way, right? We don't want long drawn out content. It's get to the point as fast as possible. Can be really valuable for people and they like to consume it.
So just video yourself as you're doing things, right? Don't overcomplicate it.
And test. You will post things that will flop. You will post things that will be successful. You will post things where you put your foot in your mouth, but learn from it, test, and don't be afraid to try something unique.
Speak to now some of the maybe technology that you're using or that you would recommend and how you've used that successfully.
It's a really big learning curve. And I think everybody is look, I love AI. Use it every single day. I think people are so enamored with AI that they're kind of skipping this golden opportunity right in front of our faces, which is still the benefits of social media. You can get on Twitter and get 1 million views a day. I was talking to a gentleman who goes by the name of Strip Mall Guy.
I've seen him.
Commercial real estate Twitter page. He told me every day he aims for 1 million impressions. That's profound. And something that you can do on TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. It's actually possible for anyone today. So when you talk about technology, a lot of people are getting lost, and you can tell a piece of content that's written by AI in 2 seconds and you glaze over it because it has no life in it. What I would say is I'm still focused on social media, authentic, valuable social media, because it has a lot. It is very, very powerful, and people are just not taking full advantage of it even today.
I think because of AI, the authentic side is going to be desired even more. Do you still use AI for some content creation and then maybe put your, obviously your own thing to it or change it, or, how do you use AI? I know that's a question that the listener has for sure.
I use AI like a soundboard, like a conversation to have. Or say we're working on a deal and somebody says, I say, I need an estoppel from you. And somebody says, what's an estoppel? Oh, Tell them, head over to chat, explain an estoppel to a commercial real estate warehouse seller. Boom, boom, boom. Like, that's really how I use AI, is really technical descriptions and communication. But then when it comes to content, more like a sounding board where I can get ideas, not a copy paste type of situation, but rather someone to talk to who can research the internet far faster than any human.
I think that's a great way to think about it, for sure. Sounding board for ideas. It's definitely been that for me. When I can just ask it a few questions or feed it a few things, and man, I just get a list of things. Then I can go dive in on more detail and specific topics in my voice, and maybe what I think about those things personally. Love that. And then speak to how this has changed your all's business. Like you're, having this kind of focus on really marketing, but social media and branding and getting your all's name out there. I get pushback on that. I've heard, it's like, well, I should be finding the next deal. I don't really have time for that thing over there. Speak to what it's done for you.
It's overwhelming what it has done. And if I were to do it again, I would have gone harder. First off, here's the thing, is when you post consistently on social media, be it LinkedIn, Instagram, there are so many more people in your town seeing you than you really know. Here's an example. I've been really into LinkedIn and just figuring out how to go as viral as possible on LinkedIn. My dad, who doesn't even know what LinkedIn is, goes to this, whatever, dinner meeting. The biggest developer in town walks up to my dad and says, "I love your daughter." And my dad calls me and said, "This guy just said he loved you. How does he know you?" I said, "It's because I'm on LinkedIn. I'm posting on LinkedIn." And his mind was blown. So a lot more people are watching than you know, but then also there's a trust factor when it comes to social media. If I show up every day and I'm posting about warehouses, I'm posting about commercial real estate, even if I'm not having a conversation with you, what I have found is the listener feels like they know you. It's like this enhanced method of networking. And I have noticed, when it comes to syndication, if I post on Instagram, like on a story, "Hey, we're looking to raise money, going to buy a deal, who's interested?" You wouldn't believe that. I would not have believed the people who come out of the woodwork. And that's because they trust me, solely because I've consistently posted content about what we do know and love, which is warehousing. You can't see it and you can't feel it, but just like commercial real estate, it's a long game. And if you are willing to play the long game, you can extract significant value for yourself, your family, and you can help others.
I can relate to that about the podcast as well, and others or the listeners have heard me talk about that. Say typically if you like plan to do a podcast for at least a year or don't even start, and do not give up. But I can on the back end of that, having investor calls is very different, right? Because of having the podcast, and oftentimes an investor might talk the majority of the time that we have scheduled, and then they're like, "Oh, well, I didn't even ask you how you're." Anything about you, but I feel like I already know you anyway. Right. And it's because they hear the show, or they, when we were doing daily show, they heard me every day. Right. And so there's this trust that's built that's already there. I barely had to say anything. And like they were already warmed up because there was already trust there because they've heard me talk so much. Right. They've heard, just day after day.
It's like being the keynote speaker at a conference and never having to leave your house. It's wild. The profound impact and connection that people can feel just by consuming your content. How long did you say you've had your podcast for?
It's probably been 6 or 7 years now, over 2,000 days.
But still early stages, which is a scary thought.
It doesn't feel like it.
Well, you're doing an amazing job. I just hit my 75th episode on my podcast, and I'm patting myself on the back. So
congratulations. Most don't make it past 15 or 20, so you're well on your way. Speak to, Aviva, like really the time spent, right? Like, how much time do you commit to this? Is this like, man, this is your full-time thing for the business? Or, how much time, do you feel is necessary to do this well? And then even get into like, well, how often you're posting on different platforms and some of those things.
I have a tendency to have a hard time separating myself from my work. I feel like I could always spend more time, post more. At the beginning, I did a lot of time in YouTube University, learning platforms, how they work, what makes them tick, how to get more visibility, how to get the best bang for your buck, right? So that was a learning curve. What I learned is watch time, right? The longer you can keep somebody on your clip, post, tweet, LinkedIn, whatever, the more you will get in return. So studying the platforms what took time. Now it's a matter of, I would say, maybe 2, 3, 4 hours a day creating content. But then you also have to be creative in how you can take that content and use it on different platforms, right? I have found if I craft a tweet with LinkedIn in mind, I can post it on both and do really well. So it's about figuring out how to double down on your, and then you make a video about that, right? And so now you have a TikTok or an Instagram or a Facebook. It's really just a matter of being creative with how you post your content, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can't reinvent the wheel, but you have to put effort into making it multidimensional. I mean, I try to get a LinkedIn out every Monday, every day of the week, except for weekends, right? It depends on the social media platforms. Like, I don't pay a lot of attention to social media on Saturdays because I know a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to social media on Saturdays. So I give myself the day. Or I don't like to post on Friday nights because I know people are not looking at their phone Friday nights. They're generally out. So I look at trends in consumerism and then post within those confines. I just tweet all the time because that's fun. And then try to post, Instagram 5 times a week, TikTok 5, 10 times a week. It just depends. Depends on the week, depends how I'm feeling.
But a lot. That's often, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just I'm glad you said how roughly how many, because that gives the listener an idea. Just to your dedication to it as well, right? Speak to your marketing team. Like, is it just you? Do you have some other team members, some VAs? What does that look like?
I have one full-time VA, who I have worked with for the past maybe year or two. She's incredible. I think virtual assistants are amazing. It's an amazing opportunity to help somebody on the other side of the world and help yourself. So I do have one VA. My husband is also a broker. So he does a lot of the like true brokerage. He's in the trenches on site now a lot, especially because I just had a baby. But between the brokerage side, we manage the syndicate, all the properties. We lease and manage all the properties. And then we have our full-time VA she does everything from the podcast, content clips, brochures, emailers. I just think about this young girl in the Philippines who just knows so much about warehousing. She has learned so much. It's a funny, but she's amazing at it. And so what about you? What does your marketing team look like?
Yeah, it's changed. It's taken a number of pivots over the years. When we first started, doing a daily show, I had a team of VAs all over the world that did every aspect of the podcast. You can imagine doing 30 a month. That's a lot, right? From finding the guests to editing the audio, the video, the show notes, the posting, it's a lot, right? And so at that time, I think there were probably 5 full-time VAs, all over the world that were doing some aspect of that, depending on their specialty. And then I pivoted at different times and we brought it in-house. And then I went out to a third party and tried that for a while. Then I brought it back in-house. And now a couple of our team members help a little bit that are full-time in the States. And then I have a couple full-time VAs in the Philippines as well that do different parts of marketing pieces, whether it's video editing or social media management, stuff like that. I've probably hired 40 or 50 VAs, mostly in the Philippines over the years, but other countries as well. And sometimes it's a one-off job or task, right? Because of their specialty, but or other times maybe they're, 20, 30 hours a week, depending on what they do for us as well. So yeah, I could not agree with you more. What platform do you use to hire? Or how did you find her?
Her name is Car. Hey, Car. I hope you see this. I was introduced to her through essentially like a marketing course. I've had two VAs in the course of my life, but Car was my first. And I was really just introduced to her in a marketing course. And I learned that it's really like the back end systems that, well, first off, it's the person, right? It's all about the person and treating them with respect and dignity and well. But then having systems in place for essentially, I call it like our digital office. So we do everything in ClickUp. It's like a Monday or an Asana. But if we didn't have that digital office space, it would be havoc. I can't speak to how I found her, but I can speak to the systems we have in place that enhance our communication and have given us the opportunity to really create literally like a workplace environment where we show up to work every day and push the ball forward.
Speak to all the things she can do for you. Like, I just want the listener, I've had different people on and we've talked about, like over the years, I've talked a lot about how to use VAs, how I've hired them, all those things. But oftentimes people are so resistant to, I can't trust that person halfway around the world, or I don't know, where would I even start to train them, or all those things. But what does she do for you, exactly on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, it's everything from sourcing deals, like truly finding deals, to writing emails, writing emailers, content, like I said, graphics, brochures. She does all I do with our podcast is show up and record. She's finding the guests every step of the podcast, editing the audio, the video, show notes, you name it. What we do is I will buy courses and we'll watch the courses. I pay for her to watch the courses. And, now we're working on LinkedIn ads where she's running the ads, creating the ads. She's putting out tremendous work. So it is literally every facet of our business. She's helped me with taxes. She's helped me with personal, a party that I'm throwing, she'll help me with. It's truly anything from, right, like the highest revenue generating tasks, finding the deals, to data entry and finding phone numbers. We use the software Loom, right? This Loom blew my mind when I found it. Loom is a screen recording software where I can record on the screen how to do something, and then she can watch it and recreate it, and that video exists in perpetuity. So it's as much or as little as you can give these really capable people. Just because they're not in your city, state, or town doesn't mean that you can't do amazing work with them.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. I've stressed it so much on the show and push people to go find their first VA if you don't have one. There's just almost no reason not to if you don't have an assistant, because it's, sometimes $4 an hour to start. And I see most of them are worth a lot more than that. And that's a big raise for them often, from what they were being paid. So I appreciate you speaking into that for sure. Where do you see, or actually before I say that, is she also doing your posting to most platforms as well? Or are you like creating content and putting it somewhere and she takes it and posts it for you? And
I'm in a bit of a unique situation because I just had a baby. So yes, everything in the last, I'd say 3 months, what we did was we went crazy recording the podcast so that I could have a few months off for maternity leave prior to having the baby. So a lot of the content right now she is posting. But I'll be honest, I felt like when I was pregnant, my brain wasn't working. And so now I've come out on the other end and my brain's working again, and I'm really excited to post. And so that's just a little intricacy of my life. But she definitely posts and reposts content for me daily.
Now, and you spoke to it a little bit earlier, but before we move on to a few final questions, I want you to be able to highlight, how does that turn into business for you? Okay, you've posted all these things, you've got a big following on different, platforms. Well, what is that? Okay, well, you put all this work in. Well, it needs to turn into some dollars somewhere eventually, right? What is that? How do you do that?
One thing I call it the millennialification of commercial real estate, where somebody owns a building and they say to their kid, go find somebody. I need a broker, or I need a property manager. I need somebody to lease this building in perpetuity. And they go tell their kid to go find someone. And then the kid goes and, starts searching on the internet, and it's a matter of being the first person they see. Or, I was doing a deal. We just closed it 2 weeks ago. And I was working on the sell side. Call up the owner. I'm just small talk. Hey, what are you doing? I'm scrolling through TikTok right now. This is a 65-year-old man scrolling through TikTok. It's understanding that actually decision makers are in places you wouldn't necessarily, decision makers are not staring at CNBC all day. They stare at CNBC, but they're doing what we're doing, which is also staring at social media. And so, like I said, just consistently posting on social media, you wouldn't believe who comes out of the woodwork, be it within your local, within your own community, letting your friends and family know what you do, but then their communities. And then just, for us, we do warehousing in Denver. Everybody knows us as I'm the warehouse lady in Denver. Getting that reputation just because of the content online works and has brought inbound leads, as opposed to me calling everybody all day, every day, looking for those outbound.
You mentioned if you could do it again, you'd do it even more. You'd go harder at it. Often I'll ask, what would you have done differently, like on a first deal or something? But if you could go back a year or two, even on your marketing stuff, what would you put more time in on the marketing piece?
Probably the podcast. I probably, the podcast is such a multi-dimensional content source where you can make clips from it, you can make tweets, and we're doing articles on LinkedIn with the podcasts. And then obviously you've got the long form content, you can clip it into short form content. I would have done the podcast a lot earlier. I just didn't have the infrastructure at the time, and probably would have hit LinkedIn and Twitter a little earlier. I was really focused on the video content, and I still am, but you always want to do more and push harder. So,
everybody always wants to know, and moving from, say, marketing, social media, but more focused on commercial real estate a little bit, what's happening in commercial real estate, and ultimately what you expect to happen over the next 6-12 months, and what you all are doing.
What is happening? Well, I was on the phone with a title rep the other day, and he said, I am not seeing many deals going through with debt at all. Right? We're in a really unique time right now where lenders are afraid. We saw the markets hit all-time highs in 2022, but then the debt market switched on us and lending became more challenging. As a result, deal volume decreased. That said, the cash buyers are out. Value buyers are out. Unfortunately, there are people in trouble who need to leave their assets, and that creates opportunity for us even in 2024. Leasing is interesting also. It's a little more challenging. We're finding anything above 10,000 square feet is a bit more challenging to lease out right now. But man, I could lease out a 1,500 square foot warehouse in Denver all day, every day, even in these more challenging times. So, like I said, commercial real estate's a long game. We will go through cycles. I thought in 2020, that was the recession. And then 2021, that was the recession. And now I still don't think we've had the recession, but it's been more challenging. And I don't know what the future holds. But like I said, as a long player, you just have to ride the waves, because We all use commercial real estate every single day. No matter what the mainstream media tells us about office space, we still use commercial real estate, whether we know it, like it, or not. And like I said, you're a lifer. You get it. It's the long game, but the
That's
long
right.
game, yeah, will treat you well.
I try to express that to our investors all the time. Sometimes when it starts going up and down a little bit, right? Where when we're in a cycle like this, and people start getting really concerned. But I think you were so focused on those pretty return metrics often, or a long time ago, right? When we're in this kind of cycle, you forget, hey, wait a minute, we invested knowing this is, like you said, a long game, right? We're in this for the long term. Property's doing just fine, but it's not always up and to the right, right? So. But what is your best advice for passive investors right now?
Get your powder dry and strike, use your intuition and don't do dumb deals. Do your research. And if it looks too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah. Do you think now is a good time to invest?
Yes. Like I said, I think I am seeing more and more sellers bailing. Let me give you an example. I have a very good friend who buys property in a very specific part of town. The other day, a couple of months ago, I see a property come up. I send it to him for 1.2 million. He said, okay, let's look at it. We look at it. We don't make any moves. Owner comes back. We're going to list it at 900,000. And my guy goes, I'm not touching this building for more than 500,000. We're under contract right now for 500,000. So, and I didn't see this type of motion until recently. And I'm seeing that with other sellers where it's like, they'll just take any offer they can get because they want to exit these assets. Not everybody, but you got to kick a lot of tires. But people want to leave because taxes are going up, insurance is going up. If you can find that opportunity and you can strike, there's a lot of upside there.
What are some of the most important metrics that you track? Could be personal or professional metrics.
That's a great question. What are the most important metrics? Vacancy rates. I like to stare at vacancy rates. I like to stare at rental rate, sale price. I'm actually not the most analytical person. I'm not looking at demographics. I'm not looking at.
What about social media or even personal metrics?
Yeah, I like to know impressions, right? What type of views we're getting on different platforms. What metrics? I like to look at my bank account to track those
That's
metrics.
a good metric right there. That's all right. No, that's a good metric, no doubt about it. What about any habits that you're disciplined about that produce a higher return for you?
I would say exercising is a big one. It's just having the mentality. I know I've said this over and over that it's just the long game. And if you just do little steps every day, I'm not looking for a home run. I'm looking for ones and twos. So waking up every morning, understanding that I'm not going for the grandiose $1 billion once in a lifetime deal. I'm just looking at putting my foot in front of the next one and creating value for other people. Those are the habits that it's more of understanding the long game as opposed to trying to just hit it big today or tomorrow.
Aviva, how do you like to give back?
That's a great question. I like to give back. Well, obviously there's monetarily and to different organizations through my childhood and through my community. But a big way I like to give back is teaching people about commercial real estate online. Like I said, commercial real estate is a gate-kept industry, and I recognize that I have the privilege of, the nepotism of my father taught me this industry, his father taught him this industry. Not everybody has the privilege of listening about real estate at the dinner table every day like I did. As a result, I get to get online and teach people about it and talk to people about it because with the internet, it's leveling the playing field for everybody else who maybe wasn't as fortunate as I. And so I think my biggest way to give back that isn't monetarily is through educating folks about commercial real estate.
Awesome. Aviva, honored to have you on the show and your willingness to give back to us today and really walking through your some of your media strategies and even how you would amp it up if you could do it again. But man, just the focus and how it's helped you all to see success in a big way. So great. I'm really grateful for that. And I was hoping to get to, man, I think there's another passion of yours around what is it, blockchain and NFTs and some of that that I was hoping to have a little time for. Maybe we'll have you back and talk about that in the future because I think that would be very interesting to hear more of as well. So very grateful. How can the listeners get in touch with you and learn more about you?
Thank you, Whitney, for having me. This has been really fun. For all you listening, I have a podcast called Commercial Real Estate Secrets. Go listen to that. And then on all platforms, you can find me at Aviva Real Estate, AVIVA Real Estate. DM me and happy to chat or answer any questions.